You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately feel like you're from a different planet? Everyone's laughing at jokes you don't find funny. They're having conversations about things that seem, well, pointless. And you're standing there wondering if there's something fundamentally wrong with you. Here's the thing nobody talks about. If you're really intelligent, social situations aren't just awkward, they're exhausting. Today, we're diving into something most people won't admit out loud. Intelligence can be a curse. Not the, oh, poor me, I'm so smart kind of whining, but a genuine psychological burden that affects millions of people. We're talking about why your brain, the thing that should be your greatest asset, sometimes feels like it's working against you in every social interaction. Why conversations drain you. Why you feel like you're constantly wearing a mask. And why, despite having all this intellectual firepower, you might be lonelier than people half as smart as you. This isn't about superiority. It's about survival. So let's figure out what's actually happening in your head. All right, let's start with something that'll mess with your head. Scientists have discovered that there's basically an inverse relationship between intelligence and happiness. The smarter you get, the more you suffer. Sounds backwards, right? But stick with me here. Think about the last time you watched a movie with friends. While everyone else was enjoying the explosions and plot twists, were you sitting there picking apart plot holes? Noticing the terrible dialogue? Getting annoyed by the lazy writing? That's your curse right there. Your brain won't let you just enjoy things. It's always analyzing, always questioning, always digging deeper. Other people can watch a romantic comedy and get swept up in the emotions. You're over there thinking about how unrealistic the relationship dynamics are and why the female lead has zero agency in her own story. It's like having a really annoying critic living in your head who never shuts up. Researchers call this cognitive burden, but I think that sounds too clinical. What really is? It's the inability to turn off your brain when everyone else gets to coast on autopilot. You can't unsee patterns once you spotted them. You can't ignore logical fallacies once you've learned to recognize them. And you definitely can't pretend that most small talk isn't just people filling silence because they're uncomfortable with their own thoughts. The worst part? You start to feel guilty about this. Like somehow your intelligence makes you defective. Everyone else seems to navigate life so effortlessly while you're stuck overthinking everything. But here's what they don't tell you. Most people aren't navigating life effortlessly. They're just not paying attention to how difficult it actually is. Okay, so here's where things get really weird. Most social interaction is basically improvisational theater, except nobody admits they're acting. Everyone's playing a character, the cool guy, the supportive friend, the successful professional, and they've been doing it so long they've forgotten they're performing. But when you're highly intelligent, you see right through the performance. You notice when someone's authentic laugh is slightly too loud and lasts exactly 2 beats too long. You catch the micro expressions that betray what people really think. You hear the subtext in every conversation, the things people are really saying underneath their words. It's like having X-ray vision for bullshit. Now, this creates a massive problem. Do you play along with the theater? Pretend you don't notice that Brad from accounting is clearly lying about his weekend plans? Act like Sarah's enthusiasm about the company retreat isn't completely fake? Most smart people choose to fake it. They learn to laugh at the right moments, nod enthusiastically at boring stories, and mirror the energy of whoever they're talking to. They become master performers themselves. But here's the thing about performing all the time. It's absolutely exhausting. Imagine having to run calculations for every single interaction. Should I seem more interested in this story? Am I coming across as too serious? Did that joke land, or should I explain it? Wait, if I explain it, will they think I'm condescending? Meanwhile, everyone else is just being. They're not running these background processes. They're not constantly monitoring their social performance and adjusting in real time. You end up feeling like you're playing a video game where everyone else got the instruction manual and you're just mashing buttons hoping something works. And the cruelest irony? The very intelligence that could make you an incredible conversationalist becomes the thing that stops you from having real conversations. You're too aware of the performance to lose yourself in the moment. Let me paint you a picture that might hit close to home. You're at a party, and someone starts complaining about their relationship problems. As they're talking, you can see exactly what's happening. They're in a classic codependent pattern. They're dating someone who's emotionally unavailable because it mirrors their childhood relationship with their father, and they're asking for advice but don't actually want to change anything. You could help them. You could explain the psychological dynamics at play. You could offer genuine insights that might actually improve their life. But you've learned not to do that, because the last time you tried to help someone understand their own behavioral patterns, they got defensive and accused you of psychoanalyzing them, as if understanding human behavior was somehow offensive. So you nod and make sympathetic noises while internally screaming because you're watching someone suffer from problems that have clear, identifiable solutions, but they'd rather complain than change. This is the loneliness that comes with intelligence. Not the loneliness of being disliked, but the loneliness of understanding things that nobody wants to hear. You start to realize that most people don't actually want to understand themselves or their situations. They want validation. They want someone to tell them they're right and everyone else is wrong. They want to feel better without having to do the work of getting better. And slowly, you begin to feel like an alien anthropologist studying human behavior from the outside. You can see the patterns, predict the outcomes, understand the motivations, but you can't participate authentically because participation requires a willingness to ignore what you know. You want to connect, but connection seems to require either dumbing yourself down or pretending not to see what's right in front of you. The tragedy isn't that you're smarter than other people. The tragedy is that your intelligence creates a barrier to the very thing you want most: genuine human connection. Now let's talk about the big stuff, the really heavy stuff that keeps you up at 3 a.m. Most people go through their entire lives without seriously grappling with the fundamental questions. What's the point? Why does any of this matter? What happens when we die? They're too busy with Netflix and social media and career ladders to stare into the abyss. But you? Your brain won't let you avoid the big questions. You can't help but see that most people stress about meaningless things. That promotion everyone's fighting for? In 100 years, nobody will remember who got it. The social drama that's consuming your friend group? It's just primates fighting over status in artificial hierarchies that we made up. This awareness is simultaneously liberating and crushing. On one hand, it frees you from a lot of the anxiety that paralyzes other people. You're not going to have a panic attack about looking stupid at the company presentation because you understand that the presentation itself is kind of absurd when you zoom out far enough. But on the other hand, it makes it really hard to care about anything. If nothing ultimately matters, why should you get excited about your career? If all relationships end in death or dissolution, why invest emotionally in people? If the universe is vast and indifferent, what's the point of trying? Philosophers have a term for this: existential depression. It's not clinical depression. It's a rational response to understanding reality too clearly. You've seen behind the curtain, and it turns out there's no wizard, just a bunch of people making stuff up as they go along. The problem is, you can't unknow what you know. You can't go back to believing in the comforting illusions that make life bearable for most people. You're stuck with this clarity that feels more like a burden than a gift. And when you try to talk to people about these thoughts, they either think you're being dramatic or they get uncomfortable and change the subject. They don't want to think about mortality or meaninglessness. They want to talk about the weather. So you learn to keep these thoughts to yourself, which only makes the isolation worse. Here's the thing a lot of people don't know. The smarter you get, the harder it becomes to have normal conversations. It's not that you lack social skills. It's that your natural way of communicating intimidates people without you even realizing it. When you talk, you're precise. You choose words that mean exactly what you want to say. You provide context because context matters. You think in systems and connections, so your explanations tend to be thorough. But most people communicate in shorthand. They assume shared knowledge. They speak in generalizations and expect you to fill in the blanks. They prioritize feeling understood over being technically accurate. So when you interact with them, a weird thing happens. Your precision makes them feel imprecise. Your vocabulary reminds them of words they don't know. Your logical structure highlights how scattered their thinking is. And instead of appreciating the clarity you bring to conversations, they feel inadequate. They start to see your natural communication style as showing off. Your genuine curiosity gets interpreted as interrogation. Your attempts to understand their perspective come across as you trying to prove them wrong. You're not trying to make anyone feel stupid. You're just being yourself. But yourself apparently comes with a warning label that says, may cause feelings of intellectual insecurity. The worst part is when people start making jokes about you being the smart one or too smart for your own good. They've created this narrative where intelligence is somehow a personality flaw, like you chose to be analytical just to annoy them. So you face an impossible choice every time you open your mouth. Do you dumb down your language and feel like you're betraying yourself? Or do you speak naturally and watch people's faces shut down? Most highly intelligent people develop what I call a social vocabulary, a dumbed-down version of how they actually think, designed to not threaten anyone's ego. They learn to hide their intelligence like it's something shameful. But living with this split between your real voice and your social voice creates its own kind of exhaustion. You start to forget who you really are underneath all the code switching and careful word choices. Here's where things get really complicated, and this might explain a lot about your relationships. Highly intelligent people often struggle with emotional intelligence, but not for the reason you'd think. It's not that they lack empathy. They actually tend to be quite empathetic. The problem is that they intellectualize emotions instead of just feeling them. When something makes you sad, do you just feel sad? Or do you immediately start analyzing why you're sad, what triggered it, how it connects to past experiences, and what you should do about it? If you're like most intelligent people, it's the second one. Your brain treats emotions like problems to be solved rather than experiences to be felt. This creates a weird disconnect from your own emotional life. You understand feelings conceptually, but you're not great at just sitting with them. It's like being a food critic who knows everything about cuisine, but can't taste anything. And this absolutely destroys your ability to connect with other people emotionally. When someone comes to you upset, your first instinct is to figure out what's wrong and fix it. You offer solutions, you analyze their situation, you help them understand the patterns you're seeing. But they don't want analysis. They want you to feel with them. They don't want solutions. They want validation. They don't want to understand their emotions. They want their emotions to be understood. You're trying to connect through thinking, but they need you to connect through feeling. And since thinking is your default mode, you end up feeling like you're speaking different languages. The frustrating thing is that you genuinely want to help. You care about the people in your life. But your way of caring, through understanding and problem solving, isn't what they need in emotional moments. They need you to say, that sounds really hard, and sit with their pain, not explain why they're experiencing pain or how they could stop experiencing pain. This disconnect affects romantic relationships especially hard. Your partner wants emotional intimacy, but you keep offering intellectual intimacy. They want to feel understood, but you keep trying to help them understand themselves. And the more you try to bridge this gap through analysis, the wider it gets. Because emotional connection isn't a problem to be solved. It's an experience to be shared. The Perfectionism Trap. Let's talk about something that probably drives everyone around you crazy, even though you can't help it. When you can see all the ways things could be better, good enough becomes your enemy. You notice every inefficiency in systems. You spot every logical inconsistency in arguments. You see missed opportunities everywhere. Your brain is basically a debugging program that never stops running. This makes you incredibly valuable in certain contexts. You catch mistakes others miss, you optimize processes, you find elegant solutions to complex problems. But it also makes you exhausting to be around. Because most people are okay with imperfection. They can live with systems that work pretty well. They don't need optimal solutions, they need workable ones. They're fine with close enough because close enough gets the job done and lets them move on with their lives. But your brain won't accept close enough. It keeps pushing for better, more complete, more elegant solutions. And when you share these improvements with people, what they hear is criticism of what they've already built. You think you're being helpful. They think you're being impossibly demanding. This extends to relationships in ways that could be really damaging. You see potential in people. You can envision who they could become if they just made a few changes, broke a few bad habits, developed better systems. But they don't want to be optimized. They want to be loved as they are right now, flaws and all. Your vision of their better self feels like rejection of their current self. Your suggestions for improvement come across as dissatisfaction with who they are today. So they get defensive. They dig in their heels. They choose comfort over growth because growth feels like an indictment of where they are now. And you're left wondering why people prefer their problems to your solutions. Why they'd rather struggle with inefficient systems than implement improvements that would make their lives easier. The brutal truth? Most people would rather be comfortable than optimized. They'd rather be accepted as they are than challenged to become more. But you can't turn off the part of your brain that sees possibilities. You can't stop noticing how much better things could be. So you're trapped in a world full of people who could improve their lives dramatically but choose not to, while you're the only one who seems to see the potential that's being wasted. So what do you do with all this? How do you live with a brain that seems designed to make social connections harder? First thing, stop trying to fix yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. Your brain works differently, and that's not a bug, it's a feature. The problem isn't your intelligence. It's that you've been trying to fit into spaces that weren't designed for minds like yours. Stop apologizing for seeing what others can't see. Stop dumbing yourself down to make other people comfortable. Stop pretending that shallow conversations are fulfilling when they're not. Second, find your people. And yes, they exist, even though they're rare. Look for the people who light up when you share a complex idea instead of glazing over. The ones who ask follow-up questions instead of changing the subject. The ones who appreciate depth and aren't threatened by your natural way of thinking. They might be in book clubs, philosophy meetups, academic conferences, specialized online communities, or just random encounters where someone surprises you by actually engaging with ideas. When you find these people, the relief is incredible. Suddenly, you can have conversations without running constant background calculations about how to make your thoughts palatable. You can be curious without being careful. You can think out loud without worrying about intimidating anyone. Third, learn to see your intelligence as a gift that comes with responsibilities, not just burdens. Yes, it can be isolating. Yes, it makes social situations more complex. But it also allows you to see beauty that others miss, solve problems that others can't even identify, and understand patterns that can genuinely help people. The world needs minds like yours, even when it doesn't know how to appreciate them. Your job isn't to make everyone comfortable with your intelligence. It's to find the places where your intelligence can make a real difference. Stop looking for acceptance in places where depth is treated as a threat. Start looking for spaces where your natural way of thinking is seen as valuable. The loneliness is real, but so is the possibility of finding connections that are deeper and more meaningful than anything most people ever experience. Your intelligence isn't a curse to be hidden. It's a superpower waiting for the right context to shine.